All right, guys, it's the Healthy Reasonings podcast, and I'm in the United States of America. I came up here because I was asked to be a part of a docuseries on cancer. And at the moment, I'm on the I-75 highway in a state called Florida. I am enjoying myself. I have a beautiful camera lady here operating the camera, and we're just cruising on the highway. I've already filmed a documentary episode. It was really, really good. But I thought I would use this time. I have 51 more miles on the highway. So why not get a podcast episode in? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Today we're going to talk a little bit about being free to make your own choice. See you soon.
Welcome to the Healthy Reasonings podcast with Dr. Andre. You are now listening to your number one source for clear, unfiltered conversations about your health and wellness. Join us every Tuesday for success stories, educational topics, and interviews with wellness experts from around the world. You can listen to this podcast on your computer, phone, or any other electronic device that streams podcasts, or download each episode and listen to it on the go. Let's get started with today's episode.
All right, so we want to talk about making our own choice. And that's something that was brought home very forcefully to me during this interview I did, because the host of the episode is a cancer survivor, or I should say she has healed from cancer and has done so successfully and remained well for several years. And it was just very touching for me to hear her say in the middle of the interview that she didn't feel, when she was first diagnosed, she didn't feel like she had the ability to say no to the conventional doctors who were offering her, the usual things, chemotherapy and so on. And in the last episode, we spoke about the response of how you can care for your loved one who has, or a friend or a family member who has cancer. But I wanted to take an approach from the patient's perspective now, because very often we, as doctors, we immerse our patients in the urgency of the situation at hand when they're diagnosed with cancer, but we generally don't give them the opportunity to have much of a choice. Or if we do, for some reason the patients seem not to feel like they have a say in the overall decision-making process. And so I was sitting in this interview and it suddenly clicked to me that, wait a second, this lady has survived, I hate that word, but she's healed from cancer for so many years. And yet talking about that experience when she was first diagnosed is still emotional for her, not because it was so scary, not because it was so sudden, not because all her life flashed before her eyes or her loved ones, her concern about her loved ones, but the main concern for her was that she didn't feel like she had the ability to take charge of her own health. And that's difficult, because what it means is that for the duration of our life, we're pretty much taking charge of what we put in our body. We're in charge of where we go. We choose to go to work at a certain time, or we go, or if we're in a 9 to 5, we go when we're supposed to go. But the point is, we take so many choices for granted every day, and yet when it comes on to our health, all of a sudden we have a tendency to surrender that choice to whatever maybe the doctor says is best, whatever our family members say is best, whatever we believe based off research is best. But yet a lot of patients come away from the experience traumatized, not by necessarily the treatment options the treatment that they went through or the emotions surrounding it, but traumatized by this sense of being dependent on others. And that is not good. That's not good. We need to figure out a way to allow patients to feel more empowered, to participate in the choices that are being made, and to be able to feel a sense of autonomy to the degree that's possible with an illness such as cancer. And I am working on something big. You know, guys, I'm always working on something big. Healthy Reasoners know me well. But this one is going to be a game changer in terms of preparing patients to make the decision about what they want for themselves. Dee Whitaker has been on here before, and she has shared very cautiously made reference to the fact that so many patients who develop cancer are type 2 Enneagram, meaning they're helpers. And whether you use the Enneagram or any other type, there are certain characteristics of patients who have cancer. Many of them develop it after years of helping others while ignoring the need to help themselves. So what that means is, if a patient who is used to helping others and not really caring for themselves, not putting themselves first or second or third or even fourth, is faced with a situation where they now have to deal with cancer. And what that means is, again, they're surrendering their own autonomy and their own decision in the process to the doctor. And so unknowingly, the emotions that would have contributed to them developing cancer in the first place are never really addressed, because here again is another situation where someone else is making a recommendation for what they do, and whether voluntarily or otherwise, they surrender their own process of being involved, and they'll say, okay doctor, if that's what you say, that's what I'll do, while deep down they actually might not want to take that particular path. And so we need to return to the days in which one of the options that an oncologist or other cancer specialist was offering to patients is, you could try something else. So let's not, as doctors, we have to be careful not to recommend just what we are used to recommending. Even as an integrative oncologist myself, I try my best not to get too complacent or locked in with the types of protocols I recommend for patients, because if we do that, then we run the risk of becoming prescriptive, just as prescriptive as I was when I was doing conventional chemotherapy, radiation, and so on. And the same thing can happen with nutrition. You can say, well, everybody's going to get this diet, everybody's going to get these supplements, without giving the person an opportunity to voice their own desires, preferences, emotions even. And that's not good, because we're not dealing with an infectious disease where you prescribe an antibiotic or an antiviral and it's just a one-to-one relationship in terms of disease, solution, outcome. Here we're dealing with a disease that has multiple different possible contributors, all of which need to be successfully dealt with. Let's take a quick break, and then I'm going to be right back with a few stories.
In a world that moves too fast, it's easy to lose touch with what truly matters, your well-being. At Teshuva Wellness, we believe in a return to balance, to healing, to your best self. Our holistic approaches nurture not just your body, but also your soul. Whether you're seeking peace, energy, or a deeper connection, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Our medical experts specialize in holistic treatments for chronic diseases, ranging from autoimmune illnesses to cancer. Our treatments are safe, non-toxic, and effective. Because at Teshuva Wellness, your journey to wellness is our greatest commitment. Visit our website today at teshuvawellnessja.com or call 1-876-787-8197. That's 1-876-787-8197. Teshuva Wellness. Return to health. Return to your best self.
All right, so story time. It's only since doing this podcast that I've started to realize just how many stories I have, and I want to emphasize that every single one of them is true. I have seen so many patients in the 19 years that I've done in cancer care, and I've seen so many variations on what you think is a simple story. So when people think about cancer, especially when you watch a movie and the character develops cancer, it's more or less a linear discussion most of the time. I remember watching Rocky. My wife and I like to watch the Rocky movies. I remember Rocky being told that he had cancer, and the emotional moments where he and it was Creed, right? Yeah, when Rocky developed cancer and he told Creed, and then it was his father-son relationship that had been developed. And it was a very emotional moment, and then I'm gonna go in for treatment. The treatment is gonna be rough. And so there's always this expectation that, okay, I have cancer, the treatment is gonna be rough, and it's gonna be a battle, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's true at all. You have cancer, the first thing to figure out is, ideally, what do you think led to this point? And then we're gonna start looking at the things that we need to do to ensure that you're properly supported towards healing. And I emphasize this in the docuseries as well. Nobody's talking about healing from cancer as much as they should. Nobody's giving that as the first expectation. You have cancer, you're gonna heal. Nobody says that anymore. And I don't know why. Well, I know why, but I just don't agree with them. So here's this story now. I was crossing the street the other day in Montego Bay, and a lady came up to me and said, "Hi doctor, I was supposed to see you today and I couldn't make it." And I said, "Hey, but remind me, who are you?" And when she told me who she was, I almost fell in the road. And the reason is, well, two reasons. One, this is a lady who has, for quite some years, maybe about 3 years, I saw her when she had already been diagnosed with stage 4 rectal cancer. Now, when I met her 3 years prior, she had already done surgery. She, I think, if memory serves me right, she had been offered some chemotherapy, had done quite a bit of that, and she had not responded well to that. And as a matter of fact, she had spread to her lungs. Even during the chemotherapy, they had switched her to another one, and the lung metastases had only gotten worse. So when I met her initially, she had come to see me because she was hoping to have another option available to her. And this is what I'm talking about. It's that she never really knew that there was another option she could have explored, because of course, in a moment where you're diagnosed and you're so vulnerable, you really surrender your decision-making process to the doctor, which is not good. So here we are now. She's gone through the treatment. She comes back to see me, and she wants to see if there's anything I can do to help her to regain her health. Because essentially what the doctors are telling her is she needs to do another type of chemotherapy, but it was kind of expensive for her, to say the least. So the first thing I say to her is, when you were diagnosed, can you tell me a little bit about what was going on in life at that time? Do you think there's a possibility that there was an emotional root to this diagnosis of cancer? Of course, nobody had ever asked her that before, so it was an eye-opening experience for her to talk about this. And when we got to the root of it, we realized that indeed she had had quite a bit of emotional trauma, not just recently, but also in her childhood. And we're not talking about, when I say emotional trauma, everybody nowadays thinks it's popular to say, yeah, I had a rough childhood. But she really had a rough childhood with lots of physical abuse. And just a nightmare through and through. So of course we had her visit the emotional wellness coach. She did several sessions, and within a few weeks we could see her improvement physically, her appetite. She was gaining weight. She was, she had never really been bedridden, but you could see that she was a lot more able to take care of herself, taking responsibility for her errands again, and so on. And the truth is that around that same time, she started to develop fluid around the lungs, what we call a pleural effusion. So the fluid was definitely going to complicate anything else I could do for her, because sometimes it's not the cancer that really causes problems medically, but it's what it does. And so my thought was, let's make arrangements to have a special tube put in to constantly allow her to drain the fluid on a regular basis. I'm leading up to something with this story. So the last encounter I had with this lady, she was strong, she was optimistic, she was putting her life back together, and all we were trying to do was to get that tube put in to her chest so that we could have that fluid drained on a regular basis so it wouldn't interfere with our ability to help her. At that point, I lost track of this lady because I sent her off to another specialist to have the tube put in. Maybe my bad, but the point is I lost track of her for about a year, and here I am now, fast forward to 2024, I think it was, or early this year. I bump into her on the street and I said, no, you really need to come and see me. I really want to hear what's going on here because you're looking really, really good. So she comes to see me the following week, and we get to talking, and I said, where have you been? I haven't seen you in a while. Did you get the tube put in? And she said, Doc, one night I ran into trouble, started feeling short of breath, and I went to the hospital for help. When they saw me, they of course saw the fluid on the chest, and they told me that they needed to admit me. I agreed to be admitted. They ran all the tests, and then they came to tell me not to bother to put in the tube, but instead I should take chemo. And I tried to explain to them that I had already tried chemo, it didn't work, and I went to Dr. Williams. He wanted to recommend something to help me, but he asked me to put in the tube. What they said to her was, you need to do the chemo. And based on what we're seeing here, you're so sick that when we give you the chemo, we're not even sure if you're going to make it out alive. And in her words, she said, Doc, when they said that to me, I felt something just hit me. And I said, okay, let's do the chemo. But in my mind, I said, oh my God, I'm going to die. So what she did was very interesting. She took out her phone and went on YouTube and started looking for any possible video she could find of somebody who had cancer who had healed. And she said for the duration of her stay in hospital, which was several days, every day from morning till evening, she would just watch videos of stage 4 patients who had recovered, stage 3 patients who had recovered. She watched a few of my videos that I have on YouTube with interviews with patients who have recovered. And she said day by day, the doctors kept telling her that she wasn't going to come out of the hospital, but every single day, she continued to live, one, and to get stronger, until one day, they told her, well, you know what? We're going to let you out because, again, the chemo has still not worked, but we believe you're strong enough to leave the hospital. So she left the hospital, and that's how she bumped into me on the street. It so happens that on the same day when she came to see me, one of the patients who she had watched the video about, one of my patients, was in my office as well, and the two of them got to meet, which was so cool because the interaction was amazing. They were able to encourage each other. But what I'm concerned about with this patient is simply this. The language that was used to describe to her what was likely to happen is, I just don't see how we can continue to follow that kind of a narrative. We can't tell patients any longer that, you're not going to make it out of hospital. That's just bizarre because, again, she's done it twice. And when I saw her in my office, having just gone through a horrible cycle of chemo, which didn't work, and which she was supposed to die from and she didn't die from, when she came to my office, she was still pretty strong considering. So that tells me, one, the likely cause of her cancer is probably not entirely physical, and we've spoken about this a million times, but it's likely that emotions have played a large role. And so we're restarting the journey again. We're starting to talk about getting that tube put into her chest, and oh boy, and trying to help her to stay strong. But regardless, I feel so convinced that just having talked to this lady for so many years, and given that she's stage 4 and she's supposed to be dead, supposedly, and she's not, and she's walking up and down taking care of herself, one kind of wonders, what are we doing? Are we doing a disservice to patients like these, or patients in general? And even with me, is my intervention necessarily going to change things? Because in spite of all the treatment she's done over all these 3 years, she's still alive and she's still relatively well. The cancer is still there, but she's still relatively well. The only time she started to feel like she was going to die was when somebody told her she was going to die. And so I wonder if things would have been different if, when the doctor had said to her, we're going to admit you, we're going to give you the chemotherapy, and it's likely that you're probably not going to make it out alive after we give it to you. What if she had said to the doctor, hey, you know what? Come to think of it, I'm going home. Or come to think of it, please just help me to get rid of some of this fluid or help me with my breathing, but I'm actually not going to take the chemotherapy. Not because I'm this big anti-chemo person, but because for me personally, I just don't want to take it, especially if you tell me I'm going to die anyway. I'll go home. Because that mental shift that she had when she heard she was probably going to die put her through days and days of agony, and ultimately she didn't die and the chemo didn't work. So where are we now? I'm going to leave it at that story for today because I want to enjoy the rest of my day. I don't want to tell anymore because I probably just get annoyed. But like I said before, something is coming. We're working on some stuff. Healthy Reasoners, you're going to be the first to hear about it because we have to change the status quo for cancer care in general. We might not be able to change how cancer is treated. We may not be able to cure cancer. You know my opinions on that already. But there are certain basic things that the journey entails that need to change if we're going to have any kind of better outcomes. Our language, both as a doctor and a patient, has to improve. And I believe that when it does, there's going to be a seismic shift that's going to happen in cancer care worldwide. So listen out. I'm not going to necessarily make a big announcement when the time comes, but I'm working on a project here, and when it's ready, I'm gonna make sure that healthy reasoners are the first to hear about it. It's been a pleasure driving with you all, and well, we started off with 50 something miles. Now we have 23 miles. I didn't do too bad. Got rid of half of the journey, and it's been a real treat. I'm enjoying the sunshine here in beautiful Florida. Who knows what's gonna happen there for the rest of the day. Always excited and optimistic. See you guys soon in the next episode. Love you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you can be updated as soon as new episodes are ready. If you have a question, send us a voice note on WhatsApp or a WhatsApp message. The WhatsApp number is 1-876-405-7831. For more information or to become a sponsor, please email wellnessdocjamaica@gmail.com. See you soon.